So, as the funky new music fades, welcome to today's live development session with myself, your host, Andy Gilbert. I'm the Managing Director of Go M.A.D Thinking, and I hope you have a really enjoyable hour full of lots of practical tips, tools, and techniques. So today we're focusing on engage and empower. Just whilst we wait for a few more people to join, I'm just going to share with you a slide that shares a little bit about who we are as an organisation. Now, I should say at this point that Go M.A.D, M-A-D, stands for Go Make a Difference. It's not because we're bonkers or crazy or anything. It's because we love empowering people to think differently and go make a difference. It's like a rallying call. Let's go make a difference, not stay the same. So that's what we're about. You can have a little read about us. We provide guarantees with our work. And essentially, we're a blend of between a learning and development consultancy and a change and continuous improvement consultancy, working with organisations around the world for the last 24 years. Can you believe 24 years I've been doing this? I'm going to buy myself a gold watch next year when we hit 25. I'm the author of about 20 books, and you can see a few of them here, and I'm going to be taking some content from these books and sharing them with you. We also work, especially at the moment with lockdown and the pandemic, with some augmented intelligence software that basically is a collaboration tool. So that's what that refers to there. But you'll see that we're driven by our 2023 purpose, and that is to help 100 million people to have a light bulb moment. So whether they're little ones, medium, or big ones behind, that's what we're after helping you with today. So let's have a look at what we're going to be covering. We're going to be focusing very much on helping you as a manager or as a leader take away some practical things that you can do immediately to help yourself and lead your team through these times of change and uncertainty. So I'm going to be looking at 3 very practical things that you can do. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do a calculation. So you will need your phone handy, so if it's got a calculator on it, and you will need some pen and paper. A really fun and very practical, powerful calculation we're going to do. And then we're going to look at something that I've developed fairly recently. This is just before Christmas, called weekly workouts. These are weekly workouts that you can do with your team to help them adjust as change happens all around us. I'm also going to give you an introduction to our 12-week new Engage and Empower program and give you an offer on that later if you continue the journey with us. And for being here right at the end, we're going to give you up to £1,000 worth of free gifts. That's for 10 people in your team, if you've got 10 people in your team. And that is fantastic. It's one of our digital programs, and we'll vote on which one it is later. So we'll end as ever with some questions, and anything you ask me, I will attempt to answer today. So just a couple of rules and instructions. Please use the Q&A button to post your questions for me. I will answer them at the end. I might answer 1 or 2 as we go through. So as they come into your mind, please just put them. And I've got a little box in front of me so I can read those questions as they come through. I work on 2 screens here. So if you see me look at this screen, just down here, there's the chat. And today we have a wonderful co-host called Jade, who will be working her magic behind the scenes and chatting to you. This isn't scripted. I've got a presentation prepared, but we will go off track, and I might name drop, reference certain books or materials, and she will put them in there as we go through. So any questions for me, please put on Q&A. Anything, chat. I'm going to be pausing several times to make this interactive, and the more you engage, the more chance you have to win some prizes. So are we ready to go? Let us see who we're going to. Well, we'll start with a poll. This is a quick poll to find out your current level of knowledge and experience about the Go M.A.D thinking methodology. Multiple choice. So just click as many as are appropriate to you. It might be that you're brand new and you've got no experience of this, and that's fine. You don't need any for today's session. It might be that you've attended. Last year, I was running these probably every other week during lockdown. So when 80% of people have finished voting, I'll reveal the results to you and we'll see who we've got on. I can tell you already that we have, let's just end the polling there, and I'm going to share the results with you. So we can see today, nearly 60% of people, 59 have got no experience at all. So welcome, this is your first experience of Go M.A.D. I'll be very gentle with you. Please ask questions as we go. 18% have attended one of the webinars before. 24% have watched my TEDx video. But if you're new, I would recommend watching my TEDx video. It's called The Art of Making a Difference. Just go onto YouTube and you'll find that quite easily. 24% have completed at least a day of training, read the book, Engaging in Power. Not many people have read the Change book. Well, that's good, because I'm going to be drawing mainly on these two books today, Engaging in Power and the Change book. So that's going to be new for a lot of people. Okay, let's just stop that poll. And I will just line it up because we're going to just do another poll here. And what I'm curious to know is which of these best describes your role. What I tend to find is we sometimes have people in different roles, whether you be working at an executive level, a team level. Sometimes we have some independent consultants or small business leaders in. And what I will do is I will adjust my content and my stories and my examples once I know the answer to this question. So 61% of people have voted so far. Come on, you can't all have gone off for a cup of coffee already. Here we go, we're up to 77%, 80s. Right, let me just share the results with you. We'll end that polling and share that result. So, very interesting today. We've got a different mix from normal. So we've only got 6% exec leaders, functional leaders, team leaders, project leaders. Great, there's going to be loads of content for you. 38% project leaders, 90% consultants, small business. Right, in a small business, or if you're running your own consultancy, I'm going to encourage you to engage today and think about maybe some of the clients that you work with, because this could help them. Okay, let us get going. So, calculating the cost of change. That's what we're going to focus on first. You're going to need pens and papers for this. And I'm going to invite you to draw. No, I'll tell you what we'll do is I'm going to ask you a series of questions. And I'm just going to ask you to write the numbers down for this. So think about your organization. If you work in a large organization, if you're a consultant, think about a client that you work with. First question is this: how many employees are likely to be affected by changes that are happening in your organization? Okay, might be all of them, might be a very few of them, it might be certain ones in certain departments, but that's the first one. Just put a note down of how many employees are likely to be affected by change. The second one then is to think about, on average, how much non-productive time is being spent each week by each employee where they're having hindering thoughts and adversely reacting to that change, maybe worrying, gossiping, rumor mongering, whatever. So how much time? Just put a note down. That's calculation B. Third calculation, see how many weeks has this been going on for? Now, is it since COVID, the first lockdown started, which is back in last March? So what's that? That's kind of 10 months ago or so. So that might be 40, 45 weeks ago, or is it longer than that, or is it shorter than that? And the final one is, if things go unchecked, how long will this continue for? Okay. How many weeks will it continue to go on for if we don't do anything about it? Okay. So now we're going to do the two quick calculations. Get your calculators ready. Phones. Okay. And Let us do the first calculation. I'm going to invite you to multiply the first three sums together. A times B times C. Okay. So this is the number of lost hours in your organization so far. Okay. Right, when you've done that, I'm just going to invite you to write in the chat box the answer to calculation number 1. Okay. So just calculate that and put that in the chat box so I know that you're ready to go on for the next calculation. Thank you, Rebecca, you were first. 598,000 hours. Nick, 21,840. Pip, 120. Ashley, 78,000. Stephanie, 400,000. Okay, right, I know we're ready to go on. Let's go for the next calculation. The next calculation is going to invite you to multiply A times B times D. Okay, and this is going to be the number of additional hours that could be potentially lost. If nothing goes unchecked, how many additional hours? Okay. When you've done that, just put it in the chat box so I can see. Nick was first, 52. Rebecca, again, you're quick today. Rebecca, 676,000. Okay, so a lot of hours coming in. Great. Final calculation, number 3. I'm going to invite you to add calculation number 1 and calculation number 2 together, and then multiply those by the average hourly rate. Okay. Think about how much an employee, the average employee, might be paid, and multiply that by the amount of hours from your first 2 calculations. Okay. So when you've done that, just put the answer in the box. Nick, I think your calculation will be more than that, given previous answers. So we're looking for a monetary figure here. Just put it in. Let me know when you've done it. Stephanie, 26,000. Okay. £26,496. Very precise, that. Here we go. Another Stephanie. £2.5 million. Chris, 1,150. Oh, sorry, Nick's come back. That's a bit of a difference, Nick. Nick's put in £26 million, which was a little bit different from his 41,000 earlier. £26 million could potentially be lost, or has already been lost, through people reacting adversely to change. Okay, so the reason I'm sharing this little exercise with you is this. If ever you need to make a business case for change and improvement for supporting people, this is the calculation that I would recommend that you do to the board or your finance director to say, look, we are losing time and money. The book that I wrote here is How to Save Time and Money by Managing Organisational Change Effectively. And this calculation is in here, right? Because people don't think of the wasted time and money that is spent by people worrying. Now, what I want to do is go on and give you 3 practical ways to deal with uncertainty during this period of change that we're going through. Okay. So before we do that, this is the last poll, and I just need to find out from you, how many people do you directly manage? Not indirectly, directly. So these are your direct reports that you line manage, that you would do the performance reviews for, okay? Not the whole scope, because I know we've got some senior people on here. How many in your team directly are there? Okay. So let me just see, we're up to 73% of people have voted. 78, we'll just wait for, okay, let's go on to that. I'll end the polling now. So 20% of the people on today's session have got over 10. A few 7s and 6s, and 60% of people have just got 1 or less. Okay, doesn't matter, right? Let me just share those results with you so you can see what I'm seeing. Okay, let's get on to those 3 practical things that we can do. Okay, addressing uncertainty within teams. Part of my background research, before I set up the company Go M.A.D Thinking, which was 24 years ago, I worked as head of organisational change in a specialist consultancy. I did a research study together with one of my colleagues, Joe Stead, who was doing a PhD in what became known as survivor syndrome. And with her permission, I was able to publish some of her findings. And one of the things that became really, really clear is the need to provide clarity for people. When people feel uncertain and insecure, what they want is information, right? They want clarity about the future. And we know that it's not possible to give clarity about absolutely everything. So what you can do is, although you might not be able to provide clarity about the outcomes and the future, you can provide clarity about process. So for example, when I'm coaching chief execs, which I spend most of my time working at board level in large organizations, and they're giving announcements about this, one of the big tips I give them is to provide milestones and say, as we go on this journey into the unknown, a lot of it, what I can tell you is a sequence of events that will be happening. Next Friday, we will be having a meeting to discuss X. We'll be doing a piece of research over the next 2 weeks that enabled us to make a decision by the end of next month. Then we'll do that. So you can provide clarity of process and next steps, even if you can't provide clarity about the end outcome, because there are many variables about at the moment. So I think linked with that is about creating small wins. Now, you've probably heard the expression, let's get some quick wins under our belt. And this is for a variety of reasons. Shortly, I'm going to be touching on one of my models, which is about how we think effectively together. And this is really important because when you create a small win for either yourself or another person, that means you've now got a memory of something in your past. So when you're remembering the past, right, it can help you to go, oh, I've had a win there, I feel good, okay? The other thing it does is inside your head, there are various neurotransmitters, chemicals that get released at certain events. And one is the anticipation of the achievement of something, a small win. And that's when dopamine gets released. Now, dopamine is the happy juice. It makes you feel good. So when for yourself or for others, you're defining small wins, you feel happier in the anticipation of it. And then dopamine also gets released when you achieve that small win. So it makes sense, therefore, doesn't it, to have lots of small wins. And particularly in organizational change, one of the key things we teach managers is how many wins a day can you have personally, and then for your team or your project team, right, over the course of days or weeks. Small wins are great. Next practical thing is about keeping your promise, okay? From the research, and again, in the back of this book, there are 4 things that line managers need to do, okay? And these are based on 4 root causes of what happens to a person when they experience change. One is that they feel powerless, so you need to involve them. One is they feel insecure and uncertain, so you need to provide that information. But one of them is really about what's called dealing with the break in the psychological contract. Now, the psychological contract is something that only exists in your mind, in the head. It's a set of ground rules that have been built up over months and years, however long you've worked in your role or in that organisation. They've never been written down. It's not like an employment contract. It's just a set of rules that you believe exist. When organisational change happens, or COVID, if we think of change outside of the workplace still affecting us, we have beliefs about what's fair and what's right. And in the workplace, you know, things get changed, processes, systems, maybe tiers of management get removed. And we might have the belief that we're entitled to certain things like promotional, pay rises and that. But then when that doesn't happen, it gets shattered. You can't easily repair that. So if you're the manager, what you've got to do is create a new psychological contract by keeping your word. So if I say to a member of my team, right, we are going to do something by a certain date, I've got to make sure that it happens by that date, or else they're going to go, oh, he's broken his word again, right? So it's only through keeping your promise that you will build trust. Right, so think about what promises you can keep. Now, here's a little tip on communication, right? If in the journey of change, you are on a route way and you've explained the steps and you say to somebody, by March, right, we will have done something, they will think that is by the start of March. You might mean the end of March. You might mean the 17th of March. So either be specific with a date, on the 17th of March, we are having this event, or say by the start of April, because people will remember April and therefore they won't feel let down if you do something on the 17th of March. Whereas if you say March, right, or by the end of March, they'll remember March, but they won't necessarily remember that you said the end. So just a little practical tip there. Okay. Again, if any of this is resonating with you, please just put a question down if you've got a question for me about anything that I've been saying so far. So I'd like to get on explain one of the 3 core models that we use at Go M.A.D Thinking. And all the work that we do here and the work that I write about and I consult with is based on essentially 30 years of experience and grounded research. So one of the things we can look at is the model about how people think. And this basically says when people think, they do 4 things inside their head. In a very simplification, we ask questions. Okay, so think about the questions that you've got going through your mind at the moment. Okay, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to encourage you. Let's just take the situation of COVID-19 and the pandemic that we're in, okay? Just write down in the chat box, not the Q&A, the chat box, what sort of questions are going through your mind right now just about this situation that we're facing, the world is facing, the UK is facing, maybe your organisation is facing. What sort of questions? Right, very good. Stephanie, how long will this go on for? Right, a really common question that will be going through loads of people's minds. How long will it last? Will it ever end? Will vaccination be enforced? Okay, now notice those questions, I can't give you an answer. The government can't even give you an answer, but they're going through our heads, aren't they? Okay, lots of stuff. All these questions are about time period and ending. How can we make our operations sustainable during this crisis? Ah, Steph. Really good. Now, I want you to notice the difference in these questions. When will this end? Answer, don't know. Will vaccination be enforced? Don't know yet. Will it ever end? Don't know. How long will it last? Don't know. But this is a different sort of question. How can we make our operations sustainable during this crisis? That's a solution-focused question, isn't it, rather than the problem-focused question? Because we could do some possibility thinking around that and find a way forward. So one of the things that we need to do is to help ourselves and help others think in better questions. Okay? Next question. Oh, sorry, the next part of this. When we talk to ourselves, and psychologists have somehow calculated that we talk to ourselves every 11 to 14 seconds, right? We sometimes talk in questions and we sometimes talk in statements. And those statements are most commonly either about yourself, about other people, or about the situation. And there's a lot of talk at the moment about the COVID situation, right? But we're also thinking about ourselves. So we've just got to start to notice whether our thoughts, the statements and our questions are helpful or hindering. And if we spot a hindering one, and it's quite natural and okay, all we need to do is ask ourselves, what could be a more helpful statement that we could say? What could be a more helpful question? Okay. So I'll give you a personal example of how I deal with this. I tend not to use the word difficult, okay? Because if I use the word difficult about a person or about a situation, I then start to either imagine them being difficult or I remember difficulties. So I tend to use the word interesting, okay? So when will this interesting situation be resolved? What could I possibly do to address this interesting situation? So just notice, by changing one word as a statement, interesting is a more helpful word for me rather than any sort of hindering word like, well, I'm not even going to name those hindering words, right? But the key that I'm sharing this with you is when we're helping our teams through change, we need to start noticing the words that they say out loud, as well as the questions, and challenging or coaching them in a helpful way to say, well, what could possibly be more helpful than that? And also for ourselves, spotting the pattern of what we're saying and just checking, is this helping or hindering me? So there's a word called metacognition. Metacognition is when we think about our thinking. In other words, we ask questions and question our own thoughts with a helpful intent of moving forward. So let's move at the third thing of what we do inside our heads when we think. When we think, we remember the past. And there's a lot at the moment, isn't there, about the good old days, right? When will the norm return? We're remembering what used to be normal, hoping or wishing it will return. But that's a question that we're asking about the past. So too much detail for today, but you'll see that these circles overlap. So we can ask questions about the past, or we could make statements about the past. Which of these is the most helpful? You can decide based on what's going on in your head. So when I'm coaching people, I'm really spotting patterns, and you can spot patterns within your team about when they talk about the past, are they stating, are they questioning? Could you intervene with a more helpful question? So what else do we do in our heads? We don't just talk about the past, we imagine, don't we? We imagine what is going to happen for us. And sometimes we imagine horrible things are going to happen. We imagine the worst. We catastrophize and imagine disasters, whether that be at home or in work. And if you're managing people, a lot of your people will be imagining, and some of them will be imagining the worst that's going to happen. And when they're doing that, they're not productive and they're not effective. So our role as managers and leaders is to interrupt the hindering thoughts and replace them with more helpful ones. So remember, we talked about imagining forward and having quick wins. What if we could help our team to imagine quick wins today, tomorrow, by the end of this week, right? They can then start to imagine little mini successes. That causes them to feel good. The dopamine gets released. They feel happier, right? So this is not rocket science. It's practical, nitty-gritty things that you can do day to day to help yourself and help your team. So that's one of the models that we use, and we're going to be using in the Engage and Empower program to help you really eliminate a lot of that wasteful, hindering thinking in your own mind and in the mind of your people. So I'm going to move on now. So if there's any questions just about this model, please put them in the Q&A box, okay? And I'll answer them at the end of the session. Question for you, a little bit of research that I like to do is just answer this question, please, in the chat box. How many times per month is change happening which is impacting people in your team? Let's see what you're saying. Okay. how many times per month do you think change is happening? Okay, I'm not going to read them out till I've got quite a few in, and I'm going to see if a theme is emerging here. Okay, it ranges at the gosh, I was just about to say it ranges from, and then Chris came in with hundreds. So it ranges from 3 times a month, weekly, nearly every day, hundreds, 20 daily. So if there's 20 working days, there's a lot, isn't there? Daily to hundreds, okay, times a month, which would be 2 or 3, well, 3 or 4 times a day perhaps, okay? So what we've got to think about then is, it's no good you just going on a change program and going, oh, all right, I've read Andy's book. I know everything there is to know about helping my people through change, because something's going to come along tomorrow or the next day or the next day that isn't necessarily what you've just read. So one of the things that I'm conscious of doing now is making sure that the right information gets to managers and leaders on a daily or a weekly basis so they can adjust, okay? And it was a Charles Darwin quote where he talked about the survival of the fittest. It's those most adaptable to change will survive, right? So we as managers and leaders have to be faster, more agile and adaptable to change so that we can help our people. So for those of you that are new to the Go M.A.D methodology, this is the model that we are best well known for. This goes back to 1997, 1998, where we conducted what was called a phenomenological research study, where we studied the phenomena of people making a difference. And as a result of 14 months of research, nearly 4,000 people, okay, in fact, just over 4,000 people, we filmed, we audio recorded, we studied, and I put together this framework in answer to a question. And this is a question: what's the simplest way of explaining the success process that people naturally use when making a difference? It's just that we didn't find a process. We found 7 key principles that were universal. And when you put them together, they form a framework. So this is like a success framework. If you want to go from A to B on that journey, you need to have clarity about what your goal is. You need to have a motivation, a desire, an energy source. We call it your reason why, that will propel you to getting towards B, or else you'll just give up. So that's being clear about what you want, understanding the strength of your desire and motivation, but also having the self-belief that it's achievable. Now, in these times of change, right, a lot of people don't believe as much as they used to, because there's so much uncertainty around. So that's why you need to have smaller goals. So if we're going to go from A to B, why don't we go there, then there, then there, then there, then there, then there, and break it down into small, more achievable chunks. But when we know what we want, and then we've thought about our motivation and our desire and our self-belief on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is high and 1 is low, we've got more belief than doubt, we can do possibility thinking. And possibility thinking is a toolkit, right, to explore the obstacles, the risks, the people you can involve, the resources, the ways to overcome, get buying, the assumptions, and exploring those for yourself or helping your team to explore those so they can ask themselves better questions. And you as the manager can share that toolkit with them to enable your team to be more effective and more productive. Like, jumping aside, but last year we did our second biggest ever major research study, and it was into team productivity. And the thing that made the most difference in team productivity, I'll cut the whole paper down very short, was this. It is the manager having more purposeful and productive conversations. Purposeful, that means they're meaningful, they've got a reason why, right? And productive, because there was clear outputs. Now, if you can have those conversations with yourself, you can have them with your team, you can have them with a wider group of people, you affect their thinking. Once you affect their thinking, they will act in a different way and they will get different results. So the other key principles that you can see there are about involving others. right? Involving others in helping you to move forward, to achieve the goals for yourself, your team, your project, your organization. And involving others can be very lateral. It's not just about the people that we know. We very often think about friends, family, colleagues as the first ones. But actually, we should be thinking, dear World Wide Web, is there anybody out there? Yeah, just a few billion people that can help us, right? So to what extent are you currently, and your team, currently involving as many people that could add value to help you move forward? So this is an empowerment framework, it's an engagement framework. And when we work with organizations, very often we work with 30, 60, 90-day challenges, right, where people are using the same tools. So, sixth key principle is about personal responsibility. Personal responsibility is about, in psychological terms, where the locus of control is inside you. And the opposite of personal responsibility is blame. So again, for mental health reasons, let's not go blaming COVID. Let's not go blaming the government. Let's not go blaming anyone or anything, because that is going to create wasted energy. If we can instead think effectively and say, what's the most helpful question I could be asking myself, right? It could be, what can I take personal responsibility for, right? What day is today? Today's a Tuesday, isn't it? Or in Go M.A.D terms, we would say today is a choose day, because we can choose our questions, we can choose our thinking, we can choose to act in a certain way, despite the weather, despite what's happening with pandemic. We have certain choices, okay? And if you've ever read anything by Viktor Frankl, the psychologist who was trapped in a concentration camp in the Second World War, you know, he talked about in his book, Man's Life for Meaning, Man's Search for Meaning, right? That the last remaining human freedom is the freedom to choose despite any given set of circumstances. And he chose to give away the bread that he was given to him. Right? He drank the water and he chose to give away, because he said, look, you can strip me bare, you can deprive me of absolutely anything, but you cannot take away my ability to choose. Okay, and that's what kept him sane and kept him alive during those times. So just notice, taking this back to an organization context now, your teams, where's the source of blame coming from? Okay, is it a group? Is it an individual? Right? What could you possibly do to help a person and yourself take greater responsibility and make choices? Because again, that is going to save time and money, right? And again, if you continue this journey with me throughout the next 12 weeks, I will share weekly and daily how to make that happen. Okay, so thinking, action, results. The seventh key principle is we need to take the action, we need to measure the results. And that is the 7 key principles of the results framework. So let's have a look at some practical things about weekly workouts. This is a format that I've devised, and basically in an hour session it goes, what's hot, right, really burning that we need to address. Second agenda item, excuse me, what's new? What's new that's coming in the last day, 24 hours, the last week, right, that we need to think about and tackle. And the last thing, what's on your mind as hindering thoughts. And this is just a structure I use now with little exercises, and I do that for my clients on a weekly basis. We have a weekly workout, we get together, right, and we then go through that agenda. I'm facilitating and coaching and adding value where I can. So if you want to facilitate these yourself, this is how you do it. 10 minutes of practical tips and exercises. I draw on all of my 30 years of content in 20 odd books and say, what's the most helpful thing to give? We do 2 rounds of hot seat coaching, taking a member of the group and saying, right, what is the subject? I ask a specific set of questions to address the key issues, and we come out with an action plan. We then do your questions answered, the stuff that's on your mind that we can agree a way forward on. And finally, we do some light bulb moments and first aid planning. First aid planning stands for actions, ideas, and decisions. What am I taking away as an action? What's been a light bulb moment and a great idea? And what have I really kind of like decided that's what I'm going to do to make forward? That's the format. So how does this all fit together? Well, I put together a 12-week program, and what I'm just going to do is I'm going to ask you one thing about this, because this is what it is all based on. What is the answer to this question? Okay. So what is the secret to managing organisational change effectively? Just have a go. Please write something down in the chat box and let's see what it is. And I will tell you if you're right. Relationships, communication, 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 no, communication, engagement. Okay, people, communication, authentic. Okay, lots of stuff. Honesty, or it says honestly. Okay, engagement, relationships and communication. Okay, I start this book off by the statement. This is it. The secret is simple. For change to be effective, transition must happen, right? So I'm going to show you the difference between something. Here is a big light bulb. Here's a little light bulb. This is change, right? Swapping places or moving about. That is change. You can see it. You can touch the change, right? But whilst that change is happening, what is happening inside my head is either resistance or I'm making a mental transition. And the real secret to managing change is to take the people with you. In order to take the people with you, you need to take their hearts and their minds. And making a mental transition is what it's about. So what is transition? It's basically using this to get more hindering thoughts to get more helpful thoughts. And that's the role of the manager in doing that. And then we can reduce those hours, we can reduce the amount of money that's currently being wasted. So to get the most from engaging in power, if you're interested in joining me for 12 weeks, is this. You will need to manage a team or lead a team, okay? So it's no good if you're just one person. It could be a project team, it could be a line management team, that's fine. You need to be engaged because this is a 12-week transformation program where we're going to meet up every week. You need to be active. You need to be really, I don't want passengers here, I want participants, people that are going to take this, they're going to learn from it and be willing to learn. So be results focused and willing to think, learn, act differently, but also are receptive to being trained and developed by myself, my team, and mentored by me so that you can get greater engagement and activity. Okay. You also have to be available at 9 to 1 o'clock for the first live session. It's a 4-hour session, right, which is a live skills workshop where we're going to practice some stuff. There's an online program beforehand, and then we go live and practice. And you have to be available for weekly workouts. Weekly workouts happen on a Tuesday between 12:30 and 1:30 via Zoom, and where we see everybody's faces this time, okay, and we help each other out and we go through that structure, okay? So that's it really, that's the criteria. So what makes this program so different? Well, basically, I'm going to be drawing on the content of my 6 most popular books there, sharing those with you and enabling you to not just learn, but immediately apply. So it's 12 weeks, I've mentioned that, and it's going to adjust every week, if not every day, because we're setting up a private Facebook group, right, where you will have access to me and my team. It'll be by invitation only to support you. So you can actually put in there, right, I need help with this, so we can keep that really dynamic. You've got the live weekly workouts. Now, if you can't get to all of those, relax, we're going to record them and we'll put them in a secret vault so you can kind of like watch them the next day and study them. You're going to get fast access to me and my team, right? At the moment, I coach chief executives typically for between 15 minutes and an hour on a weekly or a monthly basis. And I charge a lot of money, £1,000 an hour, right? By the way, it's going to a fraction of that cost, but I'm just telling you, this is the fastest way to get access to me. There's going to be lots of practical tips. I'm Mr. Practical. If you like the content so far, it's this sort of nature, and it's going to get basically 24/7 access to what we call the SPA. This is our digital learning behind the scenes. There's loads of videos, contents, workbooks, worksheets, all the templates that I use when I'm consulting with my clients, you're going to get access to those. And we're then going to measure the results. And finally, it's a risk-free money-back guarantee. That's it. So if you don't get benefit from it, won't cost you a penny. I can't say fairer than that. So this is the structure of the program. Set up live community, come on board there, get some essential reading, some learning. You get your thinking straight first, right? You put your own oxygen mask on first before we start to help the team. And then you get ready to engage and empower. About 4 or 5 hours, self-study at your own pace. And then on the 9th of Feb, we get together as a group and we will go live and we will practice some skills, and I will show you how to do a lot of one-to-one and group techniques there. Then what we do, let's just go back to that, is we have our live weekly workouts, and there's more content that we put onto the platform each week there. So what does the platform look like? It's this. You'll see here, let's just get a little highlighter laser pointer going. There's a welcome, how the program works. There's some essential reading there. The essential bits are some extracts from those 2 books. Then there is Get Your Thinking Straight, and you can see I'm introducing the thinking effectiveness model, which I've touched on, and some practical worksheets here to profile your thinking. Then we'll get into the results framework, ready to engage and empower, and you'll see here that there's some videos, there's some audios, there's some worksheets there. And then we get ready for the workshop. The downloadable workbook there, full of assessment tools, practical things that you can use for yourself and for your team. And then we go on the actual program, the 4 hours, and then there's loads of other content here. You can see lots of various things, and it goes below the line there. So that's a summary. That's the weekly workout, right? It's the whole package for 12 weeks in total. And through that, my job is to mentor, coach, and guide you and adapt to your situation so that you can really help your team. And then you will truly save time and money by managing organizational change effectively. And that's it. So Q&A. What questions have you got, either about the program or questions that you've got about any of the content that I shared with you earlier? Okay, it could be about uncertainty, it could be about any of the models that I showed you. Right, Chris, how would you involve others for organizational change to be effective? Wow, okay, big question there, Chris. It depends on the size of your organization, depends what the changes that you're seeking to achieve. We typically work with organizations of between 1,000 to 10,000 people is our sweet spot. So if we're doing organizational transformation programs, right, our objective is normally to help the organization for everybody to be able to think more effectively. That means equipping them with the tools and the skills so they can have better conversations with themselves, better one-to-one conversations, and better team meetings and projects. But what that might mean, for example, is, I'm just going to reach across here. This is a pack of cards. This is one of our clients here in the NHS. And what they've done is they've given people, all their nurses, all right, a pack of cards with questions on. And you can see on the back that it's got the framework and in different places. These are learning tools. We can literally put the right questions in the right hands at the right time. Now, we actually have a 14-point installation web where we might work with the executive team. We create a guiding team. We create a series of master coaches, and we license our intellectual property and content and train them. And then we coach them on an ongoing basis to make change happen. If anybody's interested in that, particularly the NHS, because I know we've got some there, if you just put NHS video in the chat box, we'll make sure that Jade sends out some examples of that organizational change. Chris, I'm not sure what organization you're from, So if you do want NHS video, we'll make sure that they're sent out. So NHS video, reserve a place or discount if you just want to talk about the programme. No commitments on that. I hope that helps, Chris. If there's any more questions, come back to me. David, how can we kickstart a change programme internally given the ongoing dynamic environment of COVID when changes are happening daily? Right. Well, kickstart a change programme. You do it with a group of people. So I'm commonly working with groups of 12 to 20 people at the moment, where they're saying, right, we want essentially this Engage and Empower programme to help a group of 10 or 20 people go through change over the next 10 to 12 weeks. You equip your managers with the knowledge and the skills and support them through that. That could be a change programme. Obviously, things are being done remotely. So what we've done over the last year is we've digitised everything. So we've got 65, 70 videos. We've sliced and diced those. We've put content around. We can put the workbooks on stream. We can have webinar-based things. And the world is different. You support people remotely because all you're really doing is you're helping them to think and then act in, we use a lot of 30, 60 and 90-day challenges available on this gomadthinking.com/session-EE.